Hey guys, tonight we drift back more than 2,000 years to a blistering dawn on the lip of India's Thar Desert, where the first sliver of sunlight already feels like someone swung a kiln door toward your face. You're squinting at a chalk blue sky, clutching a clay water pot that's somehow hotter than the tea you never brewed, and one uneasy thought keeps circling. The sun is supposed to be eternal, so why are the temple priests whispering that it might vanish by lunchtime? You probably won't survive this royal morning briefing if daylight really does blink out, but let's tag along anyway and see how these sky watchers plan to keep the world lit. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and your local time. Bonus points if you're bragging about a cool eclipse-free sky. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tighten a fraying turban against the rising wind. Sand hisses over polished sandstone like a million tiny rattles. Somewhere behind the citadel walls, a conch horn moans, its wobbly pitch announcing sunrise prayers, or, given the jitters, an ancient weather alert. Every villager feels it. An eclipse rumor moves faster than gossip about the king's new elephant. Merchants sprinkle holy water on their ledgers. Street dogs bark at shadows that haven't even formed yet. School children rehearse emergency chants they half remember from their grandmother's doomsday stories. A royal astrologer in saffron robes strides past, trailing the scent of ghee lamp smoke and theatrical confidence. He grabs you, yes you, by the wrist, hauls you onto the parade ground, points at a stick hammered into a clay plinth, and murmurs, "Watch the shadow." The device looks laughably simple, just a half-meter yasti or gnomon stabbed upright, yet he treats it like a prototype space probe. As the sun climbs, the shadow shortens, swivels, and scribbles silent geometry across dusty bricks. Mainstream historical fact, stone inscriptions from Ujjain show these stubby sticks were standard observatory gear as early as 500 BCE. You yawn. The astrologer mistakes it for awe and adds a flourish, taps the ground 3 times, squints at the horizon, then flips open a brittle palm leaf manuscript. The leaf looks so fragile, a joke about vegan jerky might shatter it, so you holster the pun. He mutters numbers in Sanskrit, prana 60, kala 7, converting seconds and degrees faster than your smartwatch could buzz. Quirky tidbit alert, certain medieval manuals recommended smearing fresh cow dung around the gnomon base to stabilize the Earth's humors. Breakthrough science or deluxe fertilizer? You decide. Suddenly, a flock of green parakeets rocket skyward. The astrologer's eyes widen. Avian exit velocity, apparently, feeds the algorithm. He announces, "Rahu has tasted sunlight. The devouring begins at the 5th Gati after dawn." You calculate that's roughly 2 hours and 24 minutes. Plenty of time for breakfast or for updating your will. Historians still argue whether those Gati by shadow timings were purely observational or padded with auspicious numerology. The royal entourage hustles to the northern gate, where a raised marble platform doubles as a solar observatory and, on casual Fridays, a juggling stage. You climb after them, sandals slipping on polished stone. Up here, the view is cinematic. Blazing desert, distant thorn forests, merchants unfurling tents like patchwork sails. Someone hands you a strip of smoked glass for eye protection. You thank them and immediately drop it. Coordination is overrated. Below, a priest chants verses from the Rig Veda, comparing eclipses to celestial thieves. The king nods sagely, though you suspect he's mentally drafting a grocery list. Bananas, incense, spare elephants, maybe. Sunscreen. Dad joke number 1, officially logged. The sun climbs higher, the shadow shrinks further, and tension thickens like ghee cooling in winter. Remember that cow-dung stabilizer suggestion? Someone actually brings a bucket and pats it around the stick. It smells like last week's regret. You sidestep, but the breeze follows you. Minutes crawl. The astrologer checks his palm leaves, glances at the ever-moving shadow, recalculates, then snaps his fingers. 96 breaths till contact. A drummer pounds a single beat every few seconds, apparently 6 breaths per beat. You begin to think these folks invented both mathematics and mindfulness coaching. Mainstream fact update. By 300 CE, scholars such as Aryabhata replaced those breath counts with trigonometric sine tables, turning sweaty guesswork into elegant geometry. Down below, kids play catch the shadow, trying to stomp on the gnommon's tip. Guards bark, children giggle and scatter. You grin, joke number 2, then remember the sun might actually vanish. Existential crisis postponed. Blink, and the moment arrives. A tiny nibble appears on the solar disk. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The drummer accelerates, conches blare, and a woman faints theatrically, though you suspect she'll revive if someone waves samosas near her nose. Your own adrenaline spikes and then settles into a dreamy calm. After all, the sun is still there, simply wearing a cosmic eye patch. Here's the kicker. Despite 0 telescopes, those astrologers nailed the timing within a minute. They didn't just eyeball shadows, they logged decades of sunrise angles, lunar risings, and nodal crossings, the invisible points where the moon's tilted orbit slices the sun's path. Without that trove of data, the odds of guessing right would be worse than finding Wi-Fi in the desert. Quirky epilogue. Once the partial phase ends, villagers sprint to nearby wells to check if fish have sprouted prophetic markings. Eclipse water sells in limited edition, 1 night only. Joke number 3 splashes down. As the sun emerges whole again, relief ripples across the citadel. The astrologer smirks like a trader who just shorted a volatile spice market and won. Yet he even admits, in a rare whisper, that predicting the next eclipse will demand better numbers, steadier sticks, and maybe, just maybe, less cow-dung cologne. Shadows lengthen toward breakfast. You step away from the plinth, gaze at your reflection in the smoked glass, and realize the journey has only begun. From humble sticks, you'll graduate to temple meridian stones, sine waves, and monumental observatories taller than 10-story apartments. For now, though, you smell warm dust, hear distant camel bells, and savor the thrill of cheating cosmic darkness with nothing but geometry, patience, and a sprinkle of showmanship. You leave the parade ground still tasting dust and adrenaline, only to be herded into a quieter courtyard behind the palace kitchens. Here, the astrologers' apprentices maintain a shabby little research and development zone, basically a sun-bleached rectangle of packed earth latticed with chalk marks, peg holes, and the occasional goat print, peer-reviewed by the goat, presumably. The head apprentice, a wiry teen with ink-stained fingers and an ego bigger than the king's treasury, hammers a fresh wooden yasti into the ground. Version 17, he declares, wiping sweat with the same rag he uses to clean ink nibs. Sanitation score? Low. Enthusiasm score? Astronomically high. You're told to squat eye level with the yasti's tip. Never mind that your knees creak louder than a temple door. The apprentice places a polished conch shell shard at the base to catch a perfectly oval sunspot. Within moments, the shard flashes, blinding you with the surprise miniature eclipse of your own. Joke number 1, sunglasses haven't been invented yet, so you blink like a lizard who's just discovered existential dread. The game is simple, but deceptively brilliant. As the sun marches upward, the yasti shadow shrinks. Every 20 beats of a drum, an assistant pricks a fresh hole where the shadow's point lies, then marks the time on a palm leaf. By afternoon, the ground resembles polka-dotted naan bread. Connect the dots, measure their spacing, and voila! You own a time-lapse graph of the sun's altitude. Mainstream historical fact, texts like the Surya Siddhanta explicitly instruct observers to record the noon shadow length throughout the year, then correct eclipse timing tables based on local latitude. It's ancient big data, minus cloud storage, plus actual clouds. They show you a battered bamboo caliper, its jaws scored with neat chevrons every angula, about 2 centimeters. Instead of metal screws, goat sinew keeps tension. Edgy steampunk vibes, but with more bleeding. Measuring each dot, they jot figures on a leaf in Devanagari script, so tidy it could win a modern calligraphy contest. Then comes the math. Subtract the shortest midday shadow length recorded at summer solstice from today's measurement. feed the difference into a table of tangents. Yes, tangent centuries before tangent was a high school nightmare, and out pops a value for the sun's current declination. Even your inner skeptic yawns in impressed defeat. Quirky tidbit time. Certain manuals advise sprinkling cool gemstone powder, topaz for solar work, around the shadow path to please the sun. The apprentices can't afford gemstones, so they substitute crushed seashells. Result: sparkly chalk lines that look like a toddler tried to summon a beach vacation. You half expect a crab to scuttle in with research notes. Joke number 2 logged. Soon the courtyard brims with measured numbers, drum beats translated into guttis, shadow lengths into olnans, angles into signs. The apprentices cross-reference against an eclipse cycle worksheet older than their grandparents. Every third column lists Pakshika Rahu Kala, periods supposedly ruled by the shadowy demon Rahu. You raise an eyebrow. The head apprentice shrugs, whispering, "Science meets marketing. We keep investors happy." Here comes your first aha moment. The moon's path tilts about 5 degrees relative to the sun's path. Eclipses happen only when both reach a nodal crossing and line up in new or full phase. By tracking how quickly the sun's declination changes day to day, these shadow smiths pinpoint when it will meet a node next month, next year, even decades out. That's forecast power impressive enough to make modern weather apps blush. But it isn't flawless. Historians still argue whether the earliest Indian astronomers genuinely understood the three-dimensional geometry, spheres, planes, orbital tilts, or merely cooked up fantastically precise two-dimensional hacks. The debate flares hotter than that cow-dung sunscreen you smelled earlier. Either way, the predictions worked often enough that royal patrons kept funding fresh batches of palm leaves. To keep you engaged, read Awake, the apprentice drags you toward a low wall where shadow lines from previous seasons intersect like crazed latticework. He points to an especially jagged segment labeled Monsoon Malaise. Turns out clouds ruin shadow data faster than you can say refund. On those days, observers estimated using auditory cues. Thunder, temple bells delayed by humidity, even the quack pattern of frogs stirring after heavy rain. Joke number 3 leaps into the narrative, croaking for attention. Another drumbeat sounds. The sun now hovers just past zenith. The Yasti's point shrinks into a stubby blur. The apprentice kneels, lines up his bamboo caliper, and announces a new world record, shortest shadow of the month. Scribblers leap into action, updating tangent tables with charcoal dust that leaves them looking like failed chimney sweeps. Then they convert the angle into sign differences, add them to yesterday's values, and adjust the projected nodal meeting day by dramatic flourish, less than 5 minutes. Your smartwatch would applaud if it had a clapping emoji. Yet the method demands brutal discipline. A single lazy afternoon could throw future eclipse projections off by half a gutty, nearly 24 minutes, enough to embarrass your temple or, worse, your sponsor king. Thus, an unsung hero emerges, the Nadi Valya, a simple ribbon of braided grass soaked in dye. It marks each apprentice's wrist. If too many shadow points appear unevenly spaced, the supervising astrologer jerks that ribbon. Literal slap bracelet of accountability. Corporate performance reviews have nothing on Vedic quality control. Midway through your field lesson, a camel caravan clatters past the courtyard gate. Merchants wave polished bronze mirrors, flashing sunlight and playful arcs. The youngest apprentice squeals, bonus calibration tool. He positions a mirror to bounce a second sunspot onto the ground, then times its dance with the primary shadow. The 2 points jitter like celestial twins. Cross-measuring their separation tests whether your yasti sits perfectly vertical. Voila! Impromptu laser level, 5th century edition. You test it yourself, angling the mirror until a bright spot merges neatly with the yasti's tip. When they overlap, the apprentice bows as though you'd solved quadratic equations in your sleep. He etches your name, phonetically dubious, on today's leaf. Frame it or compost it. Either way, you're in the dataset. By late afternoon, the courtyard resembles a mandala of intersecting graphs. As shadows lengthen again, the team flips tone, from observational hustle to creative cafe mode. Clay cups of tamarind sherbet appear, goats nibble abandoned straw pens, you sip tart sweetness and watch the sun mellow into apricot haze. An elder astrologer, silver-beard, eyes twinkling, explains that tomorrow they'll compare these measurements against lunar risings in the opposite direction, a yin-yang choreography of light and darkness. No telescopes, yet they map heavenly traffic with a glorified selfie stick in good posture.
Before you retreat for dinner, the head astrologer gifts you a palm leaf rubbing of today's shadow line. Hang it above your bed, he says, and you'll never oversleep. Cute, though you doubt the goat print in the corner helps punctuality. You step through the courtyard gate just as temple bells ring the Sandhya hour. Behind you, astrologers sweep away cow-dung stabilizer. Turns out flies don't respect sacred geometry. Ahead lies the stone-paved temple corridor, where tomorrow you'll meet polished meridian slabs that track the sun at exactly 0 degrees longitude. Well, the Indian version of longitude, anyway. Bigger instruments, sharper numbers, fewer goats. Maybe. For now, desert twilight wraps you in lavender dusk. You realize shadow watching isn't about fearing darkness. It's about learning its schedule, befriending its patterns, laughing at its goat-trampled graphs, and daring the sky to surprise you. Trust me, the sky will still try.
You slip off the courtyard path and follow a column-lined corridor that smells of jasmine smoke and yesterday's lentil stew. The torches gutter, guiding you toward the temple's innermost court, where priests claim they can hear the sun click past noon like a divine pocket watch. Ahead, 2 hefty doors, each carved with solar discs, and suspiciously buff apsaras swing open at a novice's tug, revealing a smooth flagstone floor bisected by a gleaming brass strip. No goats, no cow-dung perfume, just cool shadows and an air of hushed geometry. The strip is the temple's meridian line, laid perfectly north-south. At local noon, a single sunbeam slips through a ceiling aperture and kisses that metal vein, marking true solar time to within a finger's breadth. Mainstream historical fact. Several Indian temples, notably the Mahakaleshwar complex at Ujjain, use such meridian lines from at least the Gupta era to refine calendars, correct eclipse tables, and decide exactly when to ring the monstrous lunch bell. A priest waves you into position like a flight marshal guiding celestial traffic. He hands you a thin sheet of rice paper, already dusted with carmine dye. "When the light touches the line," he whispers, "lay this down." You nod, though your hands tremble, either from reverence or the 5 cups of tamarind sherbet you chugged earlier. Joke number 1. If caffeine were invented, you'd need a decaf mantra. High above, the aperture is just wide enough to frame a coin-bright slice of sky. The beam crawls across the floor, a glowing blade slicing through incense curls. At the exact moment it meets the brass, you slap the rice paper down. A luminous dot burns the dye into a neat circle. DIY photographic plate, 7th century edition. The priest grins, revealing turmeric-tinted teeth, and pins the sheet to a wooden board already layered with dozens of red sun kisses. Data visualization never looked so trippy. Quirky tidbit. Some chronicles insist those dots were later mixed with clarified butter and fed to sacred cows to recycle the sun's purity. If true, it's the earliest known instance of sustainable astronomy, zero-waste cosmology, complete with mooing endorsement. The atmosphere inside the court is so quiet you can hear your heartbeat echo off the stone. Still, the priest breaks the spell by muttering a pun in Sanskrit about Surya Surya prize that even he admits lands about as gracefully as a falling coconut. Joke number 2 logged, comedic relief achieved. Now comes the number crunching. A scribe unrolls a copperplate ephemeris covered in tidy Devanagari characters and tiny sign values, many Argentina stakes of math. He records the day's sun-kissed coordinate, compares it to last month's cluster, and adjusts the predicted solar declination curve by a hair's breadth. You notice the curve looks more like a lazy camel's hump than a perfect sine wave. He shrugs. Monsoon clouds made us eyeball 3 points. Weather apps are overrated anyway. As you watch them plot, it dawns on you. The meridian stone solved a problem the courtyard yasti couldn't. Shadow sticks always suffer from latitude quirks and morning tremors. Remember the goat hoof that nearly turned your data into abstract art? Here, by pinning noon precisely, astronomers can calibrate every other measurement. Earthly orbits, nodal crossings, and yes, eventual eclipses against a rock-solid temporal spine. Still, historians still argue whether these temples defined a pan-Indian prime meridian or merely served local ritual schedules.
the debate lights up more conference panels than a rogue slide projector. The priest invites you to kneel beside a low granite bench where an ancient plumb bob hangs motionless. Suspended from the rafters by a single strand of silk, the bob glints in the noon beam. Its tip grazes a grid of concentric circles etched into the floor. When the tip crosses a specific ring, the scribe shouts the gaudy count. The circles themselves are calibrated to the meridian, turning the temple floor into a giant analog spreadsheet. You resist the urge to Control-Z a misetched glyph with your sandal. Joke number 3 arises when a chubby temple cat lumbers across the circles. The scribe gasps, feline parallax corruption, and scoops the cat away, muttering that next year they'll install anti-meow rails. You suggest an office chair for the cat. He doesn't laugh. Yet amidst the precision, a whisper of mysticism lingers. The head priest explains that the meridian line doubles as a ritual path during solar festivals. Pilgrims crawl along it chanting hymns, believing they're moving through the very spine of the cosmos. The scientists nod politely and slide their theodolites behind cloaks of piety, or in this case, behind rolled mats. Quirky fringe and sober math coexist like roommates who respectfully label their food in the cosmic fridge. As afternoon light slants, the beam slips away and the line fades into shadow. Work isn't done, though. Assistants lift bronze gongs outside. Their vibrations, timed from the meridian noon, echo across the city, synchronizing market deals, prayer intervals, even afternoon naps. Mainstream fact encore. Medieval Indian towns often structure text deadlines around these gong sequences, proving that nothing motivates prompt payment like a sun-certified schedule. You're ushered into a side chamber where clay tablets illustrate how today's noon adjustment shifts the predicted moment of the next lunar node meeting by precisely 2 balat, roughly 80 seconds. It feels absurdly small, yet 80 seconds can separate a king's triumphal eclipse prophecy from him hiding in his elephant stable under a blanket. Open scholarly debate resurfaces when a junior astronomer insists the temple's aperture was widened during the Chola period, potentially skewing centuries of data. Another counters that any widening was offset by new brass inlays. Voices rise, quills wave, and you quietly back towards the exit before someone asks your opinion. After all, your resume still lists first-time shadow spotter as the highlight. Out in the courtyard, you realize the meridian experience has tweaked your sense of time. Noon no longer feels random. It's a precise cosmic handshake. You imagine clocks of the future, clattering gears, luminous screens, trying to mimic what a single sunbeam accomplished so elegantly. Maybe they'll succeed. Maybe they'll still need temple cats to walk across their screens and remind them humility remains part of the equation. Dusk rolls in, smearing the sky with coral and indigo. Bells ring the production a loop. Devotees circle shrines clockwise, mirroring solar motion. You stroll along, half serious, half sleepy, tracing the temple's outer wall. Above, the aperture now frames a lone planet, Venus, bright enough to inspire tomorrow's calculations. You smile, remembering your goat-trampled graph from yesterday, and whisper, "Try trampling that, Venus." Tomorrow, your guide says, you'll study Aryabhata's sine tables. Numbers so innovative, they'll make the meridians seem like kindergarten chalk art. For tonight, though, you linger under the temple's eaves, letting incense, distant chants, and the rhythmic clunk of abacus beads merge into a lullaby of measured light. The meridian stone may sleep until dawn, but your mind hums with brass lines, feline parallax, and the quiet certainty that even without telescopes, humans have always found ways to count the heavens, one burnt rice paper dot at a time.
Dawn tiptoes across the temple courtyard while you're still rubbing ash from last night's incense out of your hair. A senior monk beckons. No time for a leisurely chai. He leads you through a side gate, down a cobblestone lane scented with cardamom buns and wet clay, then up a narrow stairwell into an airy loft crammed with palm leaf manuscripts.
The loft vibrates with an almost electric hush, broken only by quills scratching, abasi clicking, and an occasional sneeze from scroll dust older than half the empire. Front and center on a sandalwood lectern rests a fresh copy of the Aryabhatiya, copied so recently the ink still glistens like beetle wings. Your guide flips to a page dense with tiny numbers running in perfect columns. "The sign table," he whispers, eyes shining. "Aryabhata's secret sauce." You lean in, half expecting the digits to rearrange themselves with cosmic pizzazz. They don't. But the fact they exist at all, centuries before mechanical calculators, feels like discovering an ab store in a beehive. Mainstream historical fact. Written in 499 CE, the Aryabhatiya introduces the first fully formed trigonometric sine table in world history, replacing cumbersome Greek chords and allowing astronomers to compute lunar and solar positions with dazzling speed. Aryabhata did for astronomy what sliced bread would someday do for sandwiches, except he sliced angles instead, 24 equal wedges from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, each with its sign rendered in kala units. The resident numbersmith, of the spectacled gentleman with eyebrows like shaggy caterpillars, places a lacquered counting board before you. Tiny cowrie shells represent units, larger tamarind seeds mark tens. He gestures for you to feed Aryabhata's sign of 3 degrees 45 minutes into the board, 225. You slide shells and seeds until they form the pattern, feeling like you're keying a password into history's first low-tech calculator. Joke number 1, there's no forgot password option, only a stern eyebrow if you misplace a cowrie. Next, he demonstrates eclipse timing. He sketches a circle for the ecliptic, then another tilted circle for the lunar path, where they cross the nodes. "We need the sun's ecliptic longitude today," he says. By looking up the declination value you helped refine at the meridian, then running a few sine-cosine tricks from the table, he pins the sun at 115 degrees 43 minutes, all in under 4 minutes. You whistle. Your smartwatch once lagged longer just updating weather. Quirky or fringe tidbit. Some later commentaries claim Aryabhata learned sign math from a vision of the serpent Shesha coiling through the stars, each scale a precise decimal. Whether mystical Python taught practical math or not, the anecdote lives on in student doodles, cartoon snakes wearing reading glasses. With the sun's position nailed, the astronomer shifts to the moon. He checks a separate table, lunar anomaly corrections scribbled on a birch bark strip so thin it flutters like butterfly wings. He subtracts arguments, applies parallax fudge factors, taps his abacus, and then gasps theatrically. "Total eclipse, 6 fortnights hence, visible at dawn." Apprentices cheer. One drops his inkpot in excitement, splattering the floor with cosmic Rorschach tests. You remember the goat hoof graphs and temple cat parallax fiasco and marvel at this new math-powered confidence. Still, historians still argue whether Aryabhata devised his sign values through novel computations or cleverly interpolated Greek chord tables smuggled along trade routes. Either way, he translated geometry into numbers accessible even to scribes whose only geometry experience involves drawing hearts on festival banners. The bespectacled tutor hands you a stylus and instructs you to approximate the sign of 7 degrees 30 minutes, using Aryabhata's linear interpolation trick. You gulp? Mental math before breakfast? He guides. Subtract, divide, add proportional bits. Incredibly, your scratch work lands within 3 units of the canonical 392. He claps, declares you adequately signful, then immediately apologizes for the pun. Joke number 2, noted. Overripe, but harmless. Now the room buzzes as scribes convert these sign outputs into eclipse quarter intervals, essentially chopping the moon's apparent speed into bite-sized motions so they can predict how fast the shadow will gallop across Earth's surface. One scribe chuckles that the shadow moves faster than the palace tax collector. Everyone laughs a little too loudly, nervous camaraderie when jokes involve taxation. Mid-morning sun bleeds through lattice windows, painting tiger-striped shadows over the manuscripts. A novice arrives with steaming earthen cups of jaggery sweetened barley brew. You sip, nearly choke on a rogue clump, and realize the sugar rush mimics the exhilaration of nailing a sign to 6-digit accuracy. Joke number 3. After today, math teachers might hand out candy just to reenact Aryabhata's vibe. Calculate 2 cosines, earn 1 gummy bear. Your tutor now reveals a palm leaf chart showing predicted and actual eclipse start times across 3 decades. You spot discrepancies shrinking from a whopping 15 minutes in the early column to less than 2 minutes once Aryabhata's table came into widespread use. Talk about a debugging session spanning generations. He traces the trend line with pride. When the margins shrink, the kingdom sleeps easy. But there's tension under the triumph. Some senior pundits mutter that the sign table's granularity, 24 intervals, simply can't capture critical micro-shifts near the nodes. They're pushing for 48 or even 96 entries, yet palm leaves only stretch so far. Ink, space, and human patience create a design limit reminiscent of smartphone storage warnings. Tomorrow's innovation might be finer meshes of numbers or entirely new math. You imagine a yet unborn scholar dreaming of decimals, logarithms, maybe an outrageous device with wheels of cogs clacking out signs automatically. Lunch bells clang from a distant courtyard. The loft empties for a moment, leaving you alone with the Aryabhatiya. You trace the neat columns again, marveling that each stingy digit, craftily encoded in Katapayati cipher, by the way, embodies nights of oil lamp study, skywatch vigils, and calloused fingertips. You picture Aryabhata himself atop a flat roof in Kusamapura, peering at a quarter-lit moon, jotting values by the glow of fireflies in a clay jar. Legend, maybe, but vivid. Outside, the hubbub of the city quickens. Metal workers hammering, spice vendors shouting, children practicing slingshot accuracy on unsuspecting mangoes. Somewhere up there, invisible in bright daylight, the moon edges relentlessly towards its nodal crossing, the very alignment these sign-dusted manuscripts have predicted. You feel a thrill prickling your arms. Prophecy by pure number feels suspiciously like magic, only with a user manual. Gathering the loose leaves, the tutor packs them into a leather scroll case, then slips a small wax tablet into your hand. It bears a miniature sign table, just 8 entries, pocket size. He says, "Practice tonight. Try interpolating by moonlight. Less glare on the wax." You grin, promising to keep goats away. As you descend the stairwell, the loft door creaks shut behind you. Your mind swirls with fresh jargon. Jaya, Kojaya, Utkrama Jaya, Sine, cosine, reverse sine. Each name a syllable of cosmic choreography. Pathways between numbers and eclipses no longer confuse you. They convince you anything can be measured if you're brave enough to sharpen the right stylus. On the street, a fruit hawker tries to overcharge you for guavas. You mentally calculate a 12% discount using linear interpolation and wink. The hawker blinks, then lowers the price. Aryabhata just scored you cheaper lunch. The day winds down in golden haze, but you're already looking forward to tomorrow's deeper dive. Bhaskara II's corrections, errant moon motions wrangled with surgical precision. For now, you tuck the wax tablet into your sash and step onto the bustling main road and join humanity's slow, sunlit rotation, knowing that somewhere behind blue sky and white clouds, a future eclipse's time frame ticks towards its appointed moment, scheduled by nothing more than keen eyes, steady hands, and a tiny table of stubborn numbers.
You're barely through your discounted guava when a festival drumline rolls past, cymbals crashing, children shrieking, dancers painted indigo from hairline to toe. One performer sports an oversized papier-mâché head with fangs like sabers and eyes that wobble on springs. You swallow your fruit and recognize him instantly. Rahu, celestial snack thief extraordinaire. The parade is rehearsing for next month's eclipse, and they're determined to scare that demon so thoroughly he'll spit the sun back out on schedule. Joke number 1 arrives unannounced. If therapy dolls existed, Rahu would need a life-size plush sun to process his childhood issues. A kindly scholar waves you to the shade of a banyan tree, opens a battered alabaster jar of sandalwood paste, and daubs a crescent mark on your forehead, honorary eclipse initiate. He begins the legendary backstory with the solemnity of a bedtime tale. During the primordial churning of the cosmic ocean, an ambitious asura sneaked into the god's line to sip immortality potion. Sun and moon tattled to Vishnu, who decapitated the interloper in one swift discus throw. Immortal body, meet mortal separation. The severed head became Rahu, the torso, Ketu. Ever since, head and tail chase sun and moon, biting them whenever the orbital geometry lines up. Mainstream historical fact, by at least the 6th century, Sanskrit astronomical treatises explicitly equated Rahu and Ketu with the ascending and descending lunar nodes, invisible points where the moon's path crosses the ecliptic. The myth survives because the math works. Every eclipse indeed requires a node. So religion and trigonometry shake hands inside a dragon costume. Yet the scholar lowers his voice for the fringe tidbit. Somewhere in Odisha, villagers still bake crescent-shaped rice cakes named Rahu Pitha on eclipse eve, then catapult them into ponds as decoy moons. The idea is to distract the demon's head with gluten-free snacks long enough for daylight to recover. You picture Rahu bobbing for dumplings like an interstellar carnival game and nearly choke on your second guava slice. Joke number 2 logged, splashy, but safe. The conversation shifts to hard numbers. Using a dusty teak abacus, the scholar explains that Rahu and Ketu each regress, move backwards, around the zodiac roughly 19 degrees per year, completing a full 360-degree circuit every 18.6 years. That cycle, suspiciously close to the Greek-Babylonian Saros period, lets Indian astronomers compile eclipse catalogs spanning centuries. They simply track when sun and moon occupy the same zodiacal longitude as a node. You realize your palm leaf pocket table suddenly feels like a boarding pass for a roller coaster that only operates every 223 lunations. But historians still argue whether India discovered that 18.6-year rhythm independently or absorbed it through trade with Hellenistic astronomers. Some inscriptions suggest pre-Greek node models. Others hint at imported terminology grafted onto local lore. Conference rooms worldwide echo with vigorous finger-pointing, figuratively, sometimes literally. The scholar winks. Scholars chase credit the way Rahu chases the moon. Touché. He draws 2 concentric circles in the dust. Outer ring, sun's highway. Inner ring, moon's tilted shortcut. Then he pokes 2 opposite points, nodes, on the inner track and nudges a pebble, your stand-in moon, along it. When pebble meets node at new moon, eclipse. If new moon misses by even 1 degree, sunlight survives. Rahu goes hungry, farmers go about their day. Quirky tradition, he notes, mandates banging bronze pots when alignment is perfect, an audible mind the node alarm. You imagine Spotify remixing that into lo-fi beats to scare demons to. Joke number 3 floats in on kettle drum reverb. Nearby, dancers practice a synchronized whirl that maps the nodal regression. One circle steps clockwise, Sun, another anti-clockwise, Rahu, meeting every few measures to mime a bite. It's orbital mechanics expressed in footwork. Bollywood meets Kepler. You catch yourself tapping along, counting beats. 1, 2, 3, 19 years. Math suddenly feels danceable. The scholar, seeing your fascination, unrolls a linen chart covered in crimson ink. Eclipse predictions for the next 60 years. Columns list dates, node longitudes, and a mysterious rating, Bhaya, fear levels from 1 to 5.
He admits the numbers double as a tax forecast. Higher fear, higher temple donations, sunlight insurance premiums, ancient style. At level 5 eclipses, priests recommend fasting, pilgrims flood the Ganges, and street beggars earn record alms. Handy for social welfare, inconvenient for snack vendors barred from cooking until shadow passes. He gestures to the festival troupe again. He says they're also data collectors. Dancers stationed across rooftops will note first contact, maximum obscuration, and final bite times, shouting markers down to scribes who log them. Later, astronomers adjust the node's longitude by comparing predicted and observed moments. It's citizen science wrapped in street theater, peer review with drum solos. You ponder the metaphysical optics. A beheaded demon inspires precision that rivals future telescopic observations? The scholar nods. Fear sharpens clocks. Yet he cautions, Rahu isn't evil incarnate, he's cosmic bookkeeping, ensuring dharma balances. Some tantric texts even depict the severed head meditating between bites, teaching humility about impermanence. You picture a floating head on a yoga mat chanting Om Nam Nam and stifle a giggle. Twilight creeps in. The troupe's metallic makeup glints red gold. For a final demonstration, the scholar aligns 2 polished coconut shells atop a stick. Top shell, Rahu's head. Bottom shell, Ketu's tail. He spins the stick, the shells blur into a single serpent swallowing its own tail, Ouroboros style. Nodes, he says, tie beginnings to endings, sunrise to sunset, birth to eclipse to rebirth. It's part astrophysics, part existential fortune cookie. You thank him and pocket a tiny clay whistle shaped like Rahu's face. Blow this when the shadow comes, he grins, and he might spare your livestock. Practical? Debatable? Charming? Absolutely. As you walk toward the lodging house, you test the whistle. An eerie hoot echoes down the alley, startling pigeons into flight. Who needs a nightlight when you wield a demon deterrent? Street lamps flicker, oil bowls perched on bamboo poles. Vendors recite eclipse superstitions while packing up. Pregnant women hide indoors. Chefs pre-cook supper to avoid stirring during shadow hours. Scribes cover holy texts so demon spit won't stain the ink. You realize that even failed geometry tests could ripple through culture. One mistimed prediction might leave entire towns skipping dinner or weddings. Eclipse math is no parlor trick. It's a social contract between astronomers and everyone's stomach. Back in your room, a tea cupboard converted into guest quarters, you unroll the linen node chart under a clay lamp. You mark today's sun longitude with a dot of sandal paste, then slide a tiny pebble backwards 19 degrees for next year's Rahu position. Will it align? Not quite, but close. The thrill of forecasting pulses through you like distant drums. Somewhere above, clouds drift across a half moon, and you picture Rahu lurking just out of sight, gnashing teeth, waiting his appointed turn. You twirl the clay whistle between your fingers, half tempted to summon him for an autograph, maybe later. Before sleep claims you, one last thought tickles. Tomorrow, you tackle Bhaskara's parallax corrections, because even decapitated demons can account for Earth's curvature. But tonight, let Rahu and Ketu dance in your dreams, their endless chase reminding you that the universe is part myth, part math, and entirely too fascinating to stay awake worrying. Drift off, whistle at the ready, and let nodes patrol the night sky.
Night settles like indigo silk over your hostel's flat roof, and the city's torches dim to embers. You climb a creaking ladder, whistle charm dangling from your neck, and sprawl on a coarse cotton mat beside 2 junior astronomers who have already converted the roof into a makeshift celestial spreadsheet. They've chalked a 360-degree wheel across the tiles, each wedge labeled with the lyrical names of the lunar mansions: Ashwini, Bharani, Kritika, Bharani. 27 slices, each exactly 13 degrees 20 minutes wide. Above you gleam the real stars, but the chalk replicas let your fingers trace what your eyes can't hold all at once. Mainstream historical fact: Indian sky watchers formalized these nakshatras at least by the Vedanga Jyotisha, c. 1200 BCE, long before full zodiac signs dominated Greek charts. They mapped the moon's nightly advance, mansion by mansion, like clock hands ticking across a starry punch card. If Rahu and Ketu define where eclipses can happen, the lunar mansions help decide when. Your task tonight is simple but hypnotic. Follow the moon's bright disk as it slides from one chalk wedge to the next, noting the exact pulse when it crosses a boundary star. An apprentice hands you a water clock, an unglazed bowl with a pinhole base, floats it in a clay basin, and mutters, "When it sinks, shout." Or shout when you see Rahu eating it, whichever comes first. Joke number 1 splashes him with the bowl. You settle onto your elbows, gaze upward, and discover a surprise benefit of second-person stargazing. Counting mansions beats counting sheep. The first boundary star, Beta Areatus, trembles on the horizon. The moon creeps toward it like a white coin scraped across velvet. Around you, other observers mumble nakshatra names in a low chant, both mnemonic and lullaby. Quirky tidbit: village midwives apparently use the same sequence to soothe colicky infants, claiming lunar rhythms calm restless bellies. Astronomical ASMR centuries before microphones. The bowl gurgles, water slips through the pinhole, the rim dips beneath the surface. You shout, and a scribe marks the gati on a palm leaf. Immediately, another apprentice replaces the bowl, resetting the cosmic hourglass. This low-tech cadence produces timestamps precise enough that if the moon meets a node tonight, tomorrow's tabla headline will read, "Shadow devours dawn at 3rd Gati, 31 Kala." Between bowl swaps, conversation drifts. Someone cracks that the moon is basically a celestial commuter punching 27 tiny time cards. Joke number 2 files itself. Another muses that, since each mansion equals the Earth's rotation per lunar day, eclipses feel inevitable, like overdue rent, to anyone who can read the ledger. But beneath the banter lingers a scholarly tension. Historians still argue whether the ancient skywatchers originally counted 28 mansions. Sanskrit texts do mention a now missing star, Abhijit, near Vega, and later trimmed the list to 27 to keep math tidy. Was the shift astronomical realism, processional drift made Abhijit miss the ecliptic, or ritual housecleaning? Debate rages hotter than midday ghee, with epigraphers wielding chiseled dates like daggers. You nod sagely and pretend your whistle is a referee's whistle. A sudden breeze lifts the edge of a palm leaf chart, revealing an ink sketch. Concentric circles of the lunar path superimposed on the nakshatra wheel, with bold dots marking future node positions. This is where mansion watching turns into eclipse timetabling. When tonight's timestamp drops into the ledger, tomorrow's mathematicians will compute angular distance from node to mansion, speed of lunar motion, and therefore estimate how many nights remain until the moon lines up at new phase right on that hungry node's doorstep. A scribe hands you a slim bamboo stylus and invites you to log the next crossing. You oblige, scratching numbers while balancing bowl number 3. Suddenly, a bat swoops across the moon, casting a flash of winged silhouette inside your chalk wedge. Your pulse jumps. Rahu cosplay live. Joke number 3 flaps its applause. The apprentices laugh, then jot a note. Bat interference negligible, emotional impact measurable. Hours wander by. The water clock sinks and rises, until the moon pierces Mrigashirshat. With each crossing, the bowl's recorded time, minus the previous crossing's time, yields the moon's nightly travel in Kala. Those increments average about 13 degrees 10 minutes, but wobble slightly because the orbit is elliptical. The scribes tabulate the wobbles, then feed them into tomorrow's Bhaskara-style parallax correction session. You're witnessing raw data acquisition, astronomy's farm-to-table movement, complete with midnight snacks of roasted chickpeas passed around to keep note-takers awake.
Quirky observation: one apprentice sprinkles powdered sandalwood around the bowl to keep mosquitoes from dive-bombing the timing hole. He claims the scent confuses the insect's inner astrolabe. Pseudoscience maybe, but the aromatic cloud feels nicer than last week's cow-dung stabilizer, so no one complains. Past midnight, temple bells toll softly. The city dozes, only astrologers, night guards, and insomniac poets remain upright. You raise your eyes again and notice a faint meteor streak across Punarvasu, like a celestial underline. An apprentice records it in the margin. Comets and meteors sometimes accompany eclipses and omens, so any stray sparkle warrants annotation. He doodles a tiny comet tail, adding flair to the otherwise neat numeric matrix. The last bowl sinks at what feels like your 100th gati. The moon edges out of Pushya, and the horizon brightens with a ghostly gray hint of dawn. Your back aches, but you grin. The chart now holds 6 precise timestamps mapping lunar advance across 3 mansions. Add them to the node longitudes and sine table wizardry, and by breakfast, some half-asleep calculator monk will announce, eclipse in 43 nights, visible after midnight, maximum duration 1 muhurta. And everyone will believe him because you were up here counting, in the chill, with nothing but chalk and dripping bowls. As you pack up, a junior scribe presents you with a small star map on indigo-dyed cotton. The mansion's names spiral outward in silver ink that shimmers under lamplight. She says, "Hang it above your bed. When insomnia hits, trace the moon's route. You'll fall asleep by Chitra." You thank her, tuck the cloth into your sash beside the wax sign table, and descend the ladder just as roosters crow new gatis into existence. At street level, vendors kindle breakfast stoves. The scent of ghee-fried flatbread curls around you like benevolent smoke. A sleepy potter passes, muttering that eclipses sell extra clay idols. Everyone wants a new Ganesh for protective company. Commerce, culture, calculus, all braided like the pigtail of the astronomer now yawning beside you. You glance skyward once more. Rahu's imaginary jaws seem far off, but the timetable in your head ticks relentless. Soon Bhaskara's parallax corrections will refine the bite, Jai Singh's towering instruments will enlarge the view, and colonial surveyors will argue footnotes. But tonight, counting star mansions by water clock reminded you that precision begins in pulse and patience. Shadow may rule for moments, but numbers, steady, chalk-white numbers, outlast every passing dark.
You've barely brushed the last speck of star chalk from your sleeves when a breathless courier grabs your elbow. The Maharaja demands an eclipse briefing. In a city that farms by moontide and marries by starlight, rumors of a daylight blackout ricochet like marbles across a marble hall. Silk merchants slash prices before the sky goes dark. Moneylenders added demon surcharge, and someone has painted the town well pump to look like Rahu swallowing the nozzle. Gallows humor slides in as joke number 1. Palace guards whisk you through spice-scented courtyards into frescoed corridors where even parrots hush their gossip. Preparations are already underway. Carpenters lash bamboo frames for giant awnings. Potters stack eclipse-safe water jugs. Midwives queue for official guidelines on shadow hygiene. Anxiety shrink-wraps the complex. At last, you reach the Jyotisha Mandapa, a vaulted war room where astronomy and politics share one anxious heartbeat. Mirrored oil lamps double every jittery motion, so 6 court astronomers look like 12. Palm leaf ephemerides, sign tables, and a sea green brass globe cover a crescent-shaped desk. The chief astronomer, ivory beard, apricot robes, snaps his fingers. Your Mrigashirsha timestamp, within 2 kala? You nod. A collective exhale scatters dust motes. Then the work turns surgical. One apprentice cranks a geared armillary to align Rahu's latest regression. Another flips a sandglass the size of a toddler. With every grain, margins shrink, or doom expands. Mainstream fact. From Gupta emperors onward, Indian rulers staked legitimacy on predicting eclipses to the Gati,
A blown forecast could cost scholars stipends or their eyebrows, singed in ritual shame. Numbers fly. Rahu's longitude 279 degrees, 14 minutes. Solar meetup, 14 nights hence. Shadow midpoint, 4th Gati after dawn. Maximum bite, 1 muhurta. Margin of error, 3 kala. Quirky tidbit, accuracy will be celebrated by releasing a white mouse at totality, reviving a chola custom symbolizing light escaping darkness. Tail curl quality is apparently an agricultural omen. Selecting the perfect corkscrew triggers joke number 2. Bronze gongs boom. The Maharaja enters, cloak shimmering like molten copper. The chief astrologer kneels, offers a silver-edged palm leaf, and fields rapid-fire questions: crop safety, enemy advantage, prayer timing. You stand behind him, pulse sinking with each sand grain whisper. Historians still argue whether these briefings were pure science or half-stage magic. Some chronicles hint at palm leaf swaps after the fact, but today's tableau feels brutally sincere. Approval comes with a ruby-tipped flourish. Decrees streak outward. Tax day postponed, pilgrimage visas redated, torch patrols doubled, and festival banners repainted with the exact shadow clock. The king departs, the mandapa exhales, buttermilk circulates. You nearly inhale a rogue peppercorn, joke number 3, prompting a healer to prescribe parallax correction for throat. Relief evaporates when a courier hawk swoops in. Scholars in rival Kalinga predict totality 6 kala later. Diplomatic embarrassment looms. The chief astronomer drafts a velvet-gloved letter offering Bhaskara's updated tables. You volunteer to pen the enclosure, hinting that cooperation eclipses rivalry. The hawk earns a snack and new flight orders. Hours blur and recalibration. Ivory mice are weighed, torch routes plotted clockwise to mimic nodal regression, and a junior scribe doodles an overstuffed Rahu taped to the brass globe. Yet every half kala is still shaved, every teethy correction rechecked. Nobody wants the termite census punishment that once befell an unlucky forecaster. Saffron light slants through lattice windows as you step onto a balcony. Below, vendors already hawk glow-in-the-dark Rahu masks. Children bang bronze pots rehearsing the Demon Scare soundtrack. Commerce, culture, and calculus braid tighter than a temple dancer's braid. Twilight drenches the palace violet. A distant flute drifts up in Raga Marwa, a dusk tune said to soothe restless nodes. You finger the clay whistle at your neck, backup demon deterrent, half proud, half terrified. Precision has bought the crown a plan. Now the heavens must keep the appointment. Back in your dormitory, you lay a perfectly corkscrewed ivory mousetail atop your wax sign tablet. Lamplight dwindles, eyelids descend, miniature eclipse, and you drift toward dreams where kings sign sky contracts, sand grains tick in slow motion, and Rahu tips his hat before nibbling the sun.
Sunrise peels open on audit day for numbers. Bhaskara II's workshop, a hillside lodge of teak beams and wind chimes tuned to pentatonic sine values. You trudge up the slope, clutching the palace's stamped palm leaf, last night's node schedule, while a goat trails you like a fuzzy parallax experiment gone rogue. Inside, the mathematician's pupils have already sprinkled rice flour in concentric rings across the earth and floor, each ring a scaled earth, each chalked radius a different observer's horizon. From rafters dangle polished copper balls, mini moons, ready to swing. You glance at the goat, it bleats as if asking for its own orbital path. Joke number 1, nice kid, but his ellipse needs work. The senior tutor waves you over a low desk littered with the Siddhanta Siromani, Bhaskara's 1150 CE magnum opus. Mainstream fact, in its Goladhyaya chapter, Bhaskara perfected diurnal parallax corrections, calculating how an eclipse's timing skews when viewed from Delhi versus, say, Kanchipuram, because Earth isn't a flat platter, but a rotating ball you're clinging to with your sandals. He thrusts a bamboo stylus into your palm. Mark where the copper moon shadow touches ring 3 when the pendulum swings. You obey. The ball swooshes, shadow kisses flower, stylus scratches. Next step, measure the offset between shadow and true center, multiply by Bhaskara's table of Kotijaya, signs of zenith distances, then subtract local longitude difference expressed in muhurtas. The math looks like mingled poetry, yet when you feed numbers into a shell-inlaid abacus, the answer slips out tidy. Eclipse onset in the capital will lag the coastal forecast by 1¼ gati. Quirky tidbit. Legend claims Lilavati dropped a pearl into her father's water clock, stopping the flow and ruining an auspicious wedding time. To console her, he wrote the Lilavati treatise packed with algebra puzzles. Apprentices here keep a pearl by each timer for luck, or perhaps as a cautionary splash guard. Your mentor flips a sandalwood panel, revealing a Kutaka table, Bhaskara's modular arithmetic engine. He scrawls the sun's true anomaly, reduces it mod 360, then invites you to solve 137 times question mark equal Rahu longitude mod 360. You blink. He grins. Together you iterate subtract and divide steps until the remainder vanishes. Congratulations, he declares. You've just time traveled by congruence. Joke number 2 sneaks in. Who needs a DeLorean when you have relentless subtraction? Now for visual drama. 2 apprentices unfurl a silk star map ceiling panel, rotate it westward the amount Earth spins during 1 gati, then lower a lamp through a roof hole. Its beam slides across the map, showing how parallax shifts apparent node position through the night. Each adjustment trims or extends eclipse contact times by fractions of a kala. A pigeon flaps overhead, casting rogue silhouettes. Someone mutters about installing bird mode cancellation in the next ceiling. But historians still argue whether Bhaskara ever constructed the elaborate geared instruments later credited to him in folktales, like the mythical shadow wheel, able to output declinations by turning a crank. Some say those devices were poetic metaphors. Others sniff hints of lost brass work and stray archaeology. The tutor winks, taps a sealed storage trunk, and lets the mystery simmer. On a lacquer tray, he sets 3 clay cups of salted buttermilk, anti-vertigo serum apparently, because the next demo involves spinning. Apprentices hoist a waist-high wooden globe, pivoted on a spike, and mark Delhi with a peacock feather, Lanka with a turmeric root. They crank, globe twirls, shadows dance. Your job is to call out when the fictitious moon shadow first grazes each marker. Voices echo. Lanka, 3rd gati minus 6 kala. Delhi, 4th gati. Numbers scuttle onto palm leaves, then into the Kutaka solver for final schedule reconciliation. A goat head suddenly pokes through a lattice window, snags a flower ring, and smears continents into abstract art. Panic, laughter, quick broom action. Joke number 3, courtesy of Caprine Chaos. The tutor sighs but re-rolls fresh flour, mumbling that even Mobius strips suffer goat interference. By late morning, you shaved predicted maximum totality to a precision bragged about in half a kala increments. The tutor rewards everyone with jaggery-coated fennel seeds that crackle on your tongue like celebratory fireworks. Then he opens a cedar chest, withdrawing a slim bronze rule etched with miniature sine values at 0.5 degree intervals, Bhaskara's upgrade from Aryabhata's 3.75 degree steps. You cradle it as if it's a lightsaber. Indeed, its edges catch sunlight like a blade. Precision now rests not merely in tables, but in pocket-sized hardware. The mentor demonstrates its use. Set one end on today's solar declination, slide until the opposite edge aligns with your latitude circle scratched in flour, and read instantaneous zenith distance, parallax baked in. You try. The measurement matches the abacus result within 1 color. A shiver of nerdy delight runs down your spine. Lunch break, but numbers refuse to nap. Over lentil stew, debates flare about atmospheric refraction. One apprentice argues that sunrise rays bend, so Bhaskara's tables underestimate eclipse onset by half a kala during winter.
Another counters that refraction cancels with increased parallax distance for low-altitude moons. You spoons do, nod sagely, and secretly sketch eventually invent spectrometer on the margin of your wax tablet. Afternoon exercises shift to error propagation. Each observer's heartbeat timing, each goat smear, each refractive wobble compounds into uncertainty. The group constructs a tally board. Human lag, plus or minus 1 kala, water clock drift, plus or minus 0.5 kala, instrument tilt, plus or minus 0.75 kala. Sum and quadrature, yes, they intuit root sum squares centuries before Gauss, and the final plus or minus margin lands under 2 kala. The Maharaja will tolerate no more than 3, so everyone exhales relief. As dusk leaks through shutters, the tutor rolls parchment sketches of far future projects. A masonry sextant the height of 2 elephants, a stair-stepped sundial 50 cubits wide, a massive equatorial ring that passengers could literally walk along. He calls these dream instruments for some hypothetical patron with deep pockets and deeper curiosity. You recognize embryonic blueprints of Jai Singh II's future Jantar Mantar. A hush falls. History's seed has cracked open right in this goat-haunted loft. Work ends with a quiet ritual. Each pupil presses thumbprint on a copy of the corrected eclipse sheet, a living checksum. The tutor then seals the document inside a lacquered tube painted with twin serpents, Rahu and Ketu gnawing each other's tails into infinity. He hands the tube to you. "Deliver this to the palace herald before dawn," he says. "Let the kingdom awake to numbers truer than fear." Night again. You step outside clutching the serpent tube, bronze sign rule tucked in your belt. Fireflies flicker down the lane, little parallax lamps charting random arcs. Somewhere, a festival drummer counts practice beats. Beat, rest, beat, rest. Rehearsing the rhythm that will echo during totality. The goat from earlier trots past, shadow fat in moonlight, perhaps seeking fresh flower canvases. You wave the sign rule like a toy sword. He ignores your science saber and continues downhill. Back at your lodging, you prop the tube beside your bed, slide the sign rule under your pillow because why should warriors be the only ones who sleep on weapons, and plan tomorrow's courier dash. Sleep creeps closer, but your mind still spins like Bhaskara's globe. Earth whirling, moon sliding, shadows bending, numbers lining up like disciplined soldiers. Bhaskara's corrections have clipped the eclipse's uncertainty wings. Now, when Rahu lunges, the kingdom will know the exact moment the bite begins and exactly when sunlight will roar back. Precision, you realize, is its own lullaby. Eyes close, world tilts, parallax fades.
Dawn heat hasn't even wrinkled the palace banners when the herald stamps your serpent-sealed scroll and waves you toward the river dock. A spice barge bound south rocks at its mooring, whole stuffed with pepper barrels and saffron sacks that smell like fortune itself. You hop aboard, sign rule tucked in your sash, while a deckhand ties your goat friend to the prow as a parallax mascot. Joke number 1, if goats earned frequent sailor points, this kid would be platinum. The barge glides down coconut-lined backwaters, past cranes spearing fish and toddy tappers shimmying palm trunks for sap. By nightfall, you reach Kerala's lush coast, where air tastes of cardamom, brine, and damp teak. Lanterns bob in canals like fireflies supersized, reflecting a different universe beneath each ripple. Guides usher you inland along a torchlit walkway to Sangama Grama, hometown of Madhava, the wizard who turns triangles into poetry. His disciples greet you in a timber hall hung with banana fiber parchment and math riddles painted directly on the slats. Floor mats woven from screw pine outline lecture rings. Inside each sits a bronze oil lamp, its flame trembling over clusters of jackfruit leaves inked with digits. Mainstream historical fact: sometime between 1350 and 1425 CE, Madhava pioneered infinite series for pi, sine, and cosine, 300 years before Newton's calculus, foundations the Kerala school uses tonight to polish eclipse predictions until they glint like fresh nutmeg. A lanky scholar in indigo cotton slaps a palm leaf on a jackfruit cutting board, chalks sine theta approximately equal to theta minus theta cubed over 3 factorial, plus theta to the 5th over 5 factorial, etc., and then turns to you. We'll stop at the theta 9th term. Our eclipse doesn't need 10th place decimals. You nod, pretending you didn't nearly faint at the factorials. Using a stylus card from Casuarina wood, you scratch the first term, theta, measured in radians as Rahu offset angle, a slippery 0.243. Leaves rustle like gentle applause. Quirky tidbit. To minimize ink smears and careless humidity, scribes mix soot with boiled fish bladder, nature's waterproofing. You sniff the inkwell. It smells like algebra marinara. Joke number 2. There's sushi, there's calculus, and now there's calcashimi. Numbers cascade. One disciple clicks seed beads on a chord abacus, shouting factorial denominators, another chants Sanskrit mnemonics for power terms. You keep pace until term 5, where decimal dust baffles you. The goat bleats as if offering moral support. At last, the series sum nails a sine value to 6 places, enough accuracy to shift tomorrow's eclipse midpoint by barely 1/3 Kala, but that sliver could rescue fishermen planning pre-dawn nets. Scroll shuffle. A senior scholar brandishes Madhava's recursive correction, remainder approximately -1 to the n times theta to the 2n plus 1 over 2n plus 1, factorial. He scribbles minus signs, draws a tiny demon face on each to symbolize alternating errors. Even math benefits from monster repellent. The refinement slices uncertainty thinner than banana leaf rice pancakes. Yet historians still argue whether Madhava's series slipped west via Jesuit translations, seeding European calculus, or rose independently on both shores like twin sons of insight. Your host shrugs. Ideas travel faster than ships, slower than goats. He offers pepper tea. You accept, soothed and caffeinated in one gulp. Next comes practical deployment. On a coir rope loom, scholars weave a Chandra Yantra map. Concentric circles dyed with turmeric and indigo represent lunar anomaly zones. Using your freshly minted sign, they slide a cowrie along the loom's warp to correct the moon's equation of center, then tug a coconut fiber thread sideways from Madhava's tangent series on solar altitude. Threads tighten, predictions refine, loom creaks like a calculating beast. The final bite times emerge. First contact at Nadi 4, totality for 1 3/4 muhurta, shadow exit and peach dawn twilight. Celebration erupts, soft-spoken, scholarly style. They roast banana chips, sprinkle them with jackery dust, and conduct a speed series competition. Winner finds pi to 5 decimals before a sand clock empties. You volunteer, manage 4.5 digits, blame sweaty palms, and earn polite applause plus an extra scoop of jaggery. Joke number 3 sticks to your molars. Curfew lamps dim. A disciple gives you a rolled palm leaf titled Tantra Sangraha Addendum, series for tangent, cosine, and versine. Practice these on the voyage. Eclipses love eager minds. You thank her. Slip the roll beside the serpent tube and step onto the moonlit veranda. Cicadas pulse like ticking seconds. Canals mirror constellations so cleanly you feel suspended between twin heavens. Before sleep, you jot one reflection on your wax tablet. Infinite series turn the sky into an unfolding scroll. No end, just finer print. You blow the ink lamp out, and the hall settles into breathy silence, broken only by distant surf and a goat shuffling for better parallax. If Rahu is a cosmic accountant, Madhava has built him an endless ledger, decimal columns reaching to tomorrow, and the next tomorrow, and every shadow thereafter.
Morning wind teases dry coir fibers from the loom, while you and the goat board another pepper-freckled barge, this one bound north along the Malabar coast. 2 sailors argue whether eclipses make sharks lazy. You decide not to test the theory. Yesterday's Kerala series still buzzes in your skull like caffeinated cicadas. But today, the conversation on deck veers towards something older and much longer. A 223 lunation monster named the Saros. You unroll a salt-speckled linen chart a navigator hands you. Across its width march 13 neat columns, each listing 3 eclipses. Solar, lunar, solar, stacked like cosmic sandwich layers. The pattern repeats every 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, long enough for a baby to grow sideburns and a kingdom to forget who promised what taxes. Mainstream fact, Babylonian astronomers documented this rhythm as early as 700 BCE, calling it SRS. Greek scholars later Latined it into Saros. Yet,
The sailor cheerfully claims his Malabari grandfather memorized the same cycle from a palm leaf song. Below decks, a merchant unveils a pine chest of curios: damask from Damascus, frankincense nuggets, Greek parchment, and, astonishingly, a battered clay tablet incised with rows of cuneiform wedges. He bartered it from a Gulf sailor who swore it predicts when the moon eats the sun. You trace its ridges. Sure enough, numbers pop out in a repeating sequence, suspiciously close to 223. Historians still argue whether this very route ferried Saros' wisdom eastward or if Indian seers cracked the codes solo while Babylon dozed. The parchment smells like sandal and sea, and you suspect the truth may be as tangled as the rigging overhead. On deck, you set up an impromptu seminar. A teak plank becomes a blackboard, turmeric powder substitutes chalk. You draw 3 concentric circles. Outer equals 18 years of solar seats, middle equals lunar repeats, inner equals node regressions tick marking backward. Align the marks and voila, eclipse déjà vu. The goat licks turmeric letters. Someone jokes it's studying for Capriculus, joke number 1. Suddenly, a cloud swallows the sun, shrinking daylight to pewter. Sailors freeze, half expecting Rahu to jump the schedule. You reassure them, only passing weather. Still, the moment serves as a vivid demo. You point out that the Saros' extra 8 hours drags each repeat 1/3 of the way around Earth, so an eclipse visible over Babylon might next time shadow Sri Lanka at breakfast and drift to Easter Island at lunchtime. Cue joke number 2, global eclipse tour, no luggage fees, but travel by 18-year layovers. The navigator flips your linen chart, revealing red ink scribbles in Malay and Arabic beside Sanskrit numbers, evidence of edits each time the roll changed hands. One note references a 1039 CE Sri Lankan chronicle. Another cites an 1129 CE Yemen eclipse prayer. The red ink forms a genealogy of who trusted whose math. You feel like you're reading the world's oldest group chat, complete with passive-aggressive margin notes. Below, in the cargo hold, a youth sorts pepper sacks by eclipse grade. Belief has it that darkened skies enrich spice potency. He confides a fringe tidbit. Certain coastal villages powder eclipse pepper into eye salves for shark night vision. Whether placebo or photoreceptor hack, sailors swear it lets them spot shoals before moonrise. He offers a pinch. You decline. Your pupils already work overtime parsing sign tables. That evening, the barge drops anchor at Batkal, a port glazed with late sun crimson. A delegation of Arab merchants troop onto the dock, brandishing astrolabes polished to mirror finish. You trade your wax tablet for 10 minutes with one astrolabe. Peering through its sighting rule at a first-quarter moon, you mark altitude, estimate time, and silently salute the mathematical siblinghood, bridging brass in Baghdad and bamboo in Benares. Over spiced fish stew, you join a round-table multilingual round. Sanskrit pundits, Persian ustad, Swahili helmsman. Someone unfurls a vellum fragment of Ptolemy, another counters with a copperplate copy of Aryabhatya. Soon verses and formulae volley back and forth like chutney-coated shuttlecocks. You contribute Madhava's series for Sine. A Persian navigator ups the ante with Khayyam's refined solar year. Conversation detonates into laughter when the goat sneezes pepper across the Saros chart. Joke number 3, courtesy of Caprine commentary. Consensus emerges, whether imported or indigenous. The cycle's utility dwarfs its pedigree. Caravans schedule desert crossings for lunar shadow cool. Chinese monks plan ordinations to dodge eclipse bad luck. African traders swap ivory only under shadow-free moons. Knowledge flows along spice routes like coconut milk over hot rice, sweet regardless of who cracked the first coconut. Midnight finds you seated on a warehouse roof, linen chart pinned by sandalwood weights. You scratch new notes. Saros equals 242 nodal months, minus 11 days, adjust west drift 8 hours. Lamps flicker below, dock cranes creak like aged constellations. You lean back, recalling the temple meridian, the Sine sword, Bhaskara's flower rings, the carol illume. All puzzle pieces click. The Saros is simply the grand chorus, shadow choreography repeating verses every 18 years, shifting stages every third encore. Tomorrow you'll ride another ship westward, scroll packets sealed for Oman, perhaps even Alexandria. But tonight, you whistle gently through the clay Rahu flute, not to ward demons, but to honor generations of skywatchers who listened, counted, and handed one another the world's longest ticking clock. A seagull answers. Maybe gull, maybe omen. Doesn't matter. Somewhere in pitch darkness, a future eclipse slots into its queue. Patient as tide, certain as mathematics, waiting for you, or someone reading your pepper speck notes centuries hence, to witness it and whisper, "Here it comes again."
Salt spray prickles your cheeks as dawn hoists a blush pink banner over the Arabian Sea. You stand amid a forest of lateen sails aboard the Kuishti Makran Pearl, scroll satchel lashed to the mizzenmast, sign rule flashing like a brass dagger whenever sunlight breaks through rigging. Yesterday's pepper sneeze has left the goat sulking in a corner. Our parallax mascot now smells faintly herbed, a walking marinade. Joke number 1. At this rate, the ship's cook might label him curry in motion. The captain, a Zanzibari mariner with rings on every finger and a Quranic verse tattooed in neat kufik along his forearm, unfurls the voyage manifest. It lists not only spices, sapphires, and sandalwood, but also 2 bundles astronomical palm leaves, 1 cuneiform tablet, 3 Greek parchment folia, and an ivory Rahu whistle. Gift. Your whistle? Recorded cargo now. Nothing like bureaucratic immortality. Beneath the aft awning, scholars gather each dusk to swap algorithms faster than merchants haggle over turmeric. A Yemeni navigator scribbles lunar azimuth corrections learned from Gujarati shipwrights. A Persian polymath quotes Al-Biruni on Earth's circumference, rolling the numbers like prayer beads. You counter with Madhava's Sine series. Jaws drop, then rise in eager rebuttal. Mainstream historical fact. By the 10th century, Arabic language compilations such as Al-Khwarizmi's Zij al-Sintind had already digested Indian sign tables, while Indian astrologers borrowed Arab shal length ratios, reciprocal plagiarism at its most productive. As proof, the Persian produces a brittle parchment labeled Sintind 4. Across its margin, someone has doodled a tiny goat chomping a shadow stick. It seems your Caprine sidepick achieved cameo status centuries ago. Laughs ripple. Joke number 2 trods the deck. First peer-reviewed goat in history. Trade winds harden. The vessel heaves through indigo swells, its map room transformed into an ad hoc library. There you lay your Saros chart beside the captain's astrolabe and a Nestorian monk's Syriac translation of Ptolemy. Under flickering lanterns, the pages resemble patchwork nebulae, each language a constellation tied to the same sky. You trace identical node numbers popping up in Sanskrit, Syriac, and Arabic columns. Historians still argue whether these convergences signal a single archetype manuscript or parallel derivations birthed by common necessity. The debate hisses like tightened rigging. Some scholars sniff Greek ennui, others champion Indian spark, a few whisper of lost Babylonian clay ghosts haunting every copied line. Mid-voyage, the lookout spots Muscat's craggy headlands. Before anchoring, the captain stages a demonstration for impressed pro merchants. He times the moon's altitude with his astrolabe while you use the sine rule and a scrap of banana fiber. Results match within half a degree. A draw that sells 3 crates of black pepper at a premium eclipse-proof markup. Commerce, culture, calculus, braided tighter than ever. On Muscat's Quaid side, you witness manuscript bartering that feels like high-stakes poker. A Jain traveler trades a teak chest of Panchanga almanacs for Egyptian papyri detailing Nilotic flood cycles. A Jewish astronomer examines them, curious whether lunar eclipses predicted by Indian nodes correlate with the Nile's silt blessings.
Fringe tidbit. He swears his Alexandria synagogue lights special blue lanterns during eclipses to mimic parted red sea waves. Symbolic sky spectacle plus maritime branding rolled into one. Evening winds usher you into the city's house of scents, half perfumery, half scriptorium, where scribes douse fresh ink with frankincense smoke for quick drying. Aromatic scrolls apparently fetch higher prices. You test sniff a palm leaf, its sandal frankincense bouquet nearly distracts from the tidy Devanagari numbers etched on it. Joke number 3 breezes in. Scented citations. Bibliophiles of the future will call this scratch and sniff peer review. Atop the perfumery roof, a brass sextant glitters. An Omani scholar demonstrates how he uses Greek chord tables blended with Indian signs and an Andalusian correction factor for atmospheric refraction. He plots tonight's lunar mansion crossing onto a parchment world map that features Europe as a stubby peninsula labeled Franga. You correct the node longitude by 2 Kala based on your Kerala series. He nods and inks the revision, cartography literally bending to collaborative math. Back aboard, the Makran Pearl turns northwest for Hormuz, then Basra. With every harbor, your satchel fattens. Persian astronomer poet Khayyam's solar year treatise, a Syriac commentary quoting lost sections of Vera Himida, a battered Latin note from Baghdad's House of Wisdom requesting more accurate signs for 5-degree increments. You oblige by reciting Aryabhata's and Madhava's digits until the scribe's reed pen phrase. Your goat, meanwhile, gains celebrity status. The captain now charges onlookers a silver coin to watch it sniff sextant shadows. Side hustle unlocked. Late one night, sail, slack, and doldrums, the scholars hold an eclipse symposium. Each recites a prediction song in their mother tongue, Arabic Qasida, Kannada Ragel, Swahili chant, while a torchlight shines through a mimed solar disk cut from date leaf, casting rhythmic shadows on the main sail. The improv theater recalls your first courtyard yasti, minus the cow-dung stabilizer, but with 3 times the poetry. As the torch eclipse wanes, applause thunderclaps across the deck, echoing into black water. You retire to your hammock beneath a canopy of stars so crisp they feel only an arm's reach away. Sine rule under pillow, sorrow's chart tucked inside tunic. You realize that prediction isn't a solitary genius beaming truth from a mountaintop. It's an ocean convoy of minds, each scribbling, trading, correcting. Like jasmine smoke through frankincense scrolls, knowledge seeps, mingles, reforms. Somewhere aft, a sailor strums an oud, weaving a lullaby around the rigging. You drift off counting lunar mansions, Ashwini, Bharani, Kritika, then dream of goats negotiating copyright deals on illuminated manuscripts.
Red dust swirls around your sandals as you step off the caravan road and stare, neck craned, jaw dangling, at what looks like a half-finished fortress for giants. Sharp sandstone walls lean at impossible angles. Staircases shoot skyward, then vanish into blue. A marble ring the size of a Ferris wheel lolls against a terrace like a lounging planet. This is Jai Singh II's Jantar Mantar, and you've arrived at the exact moment the Rajput king's stonemason astronomers are giving gravity a nervous breakdown. A boy selling tamarind sweets nudges you. Careful, Sahib. People mistake the Samrat yantra for a free slide. Joke number 1, nothing says science outreach like bruised tailbones. A royal mathematician in saffron robes beckons you up the broad stair of the Samrat, an 87-foot right triangle gnomon tilted to match Delhi's latitude. From the top platform, you feel the city shrink away. Pigeons wheel below like confused decimal points. Mainstream historical fact: completed in 1724, the Delhi Jantar Mantar could read local noon to within 2 seconds. Jaw-dropping for an era when many towns still rang bells around about midday. The mathematician presses a brass astrolabe into your hands. Your task: sight the sun along the Samrat's razor edge, then call out when its shadow's point grazes the marble scale at the base. You squint, breathe, Shout? Scribes below mark the second, a herald fires a miniature cannon, a distant temple responds with a drum roll that makes goats 3 streets over faint from shock. Precision, apparently, is loud. Quirky tidbit, Jai Singh also built a heart rate yantra, a waist-high trough where water dripped at 1 drop per heartbeat. He challenged court guests to match the flow while reciting Sine tables. Loser bought dinner. Picture nobles hyperventilating to keep up with hydrocardiac calculus, and you've earned joke number 2. Next stop, the Mishra Yanta, 5 instruments spliced together like architectural origami. 1 curved wall sports 2 marble fish heads. Decorative, yes, but also functional pointers for tracking the ecliptic poles. Your guide explains that by aligning a marked chord between the fish lips at dusk, astronomers can project the lunar node's future crawl across engraved calendars. The goat munches a weed near the base. You shoo it away before it eats the ecliptic. Everywhere, craftsmen chisel, polish, inscribe. One group coats a giant hemispherical bowl, the Jai Prakash, with powdered turmeric so the carved degree lines glow golden at dawn. They invite you to climb inside. Suddenly, you're standing in a hollow sky map, each footstep across marble ribs equal to 1/12 of the zodiac. You straddle Pisces and Aries, feeling like a sitcom demigod of seasonal allergies. A hush falls as a royal messenger unrolls Bhaskara-tuned eclipse predictions you couriered weeks ago. The mathematician compares them against Jantar Mantar's noon readings, nods, then tweaks the upcoming totality start by a single kala. Stone corrects parchment. He seals the update with vermilion wax. Historians still argue whether Jai Singh conceived these mega instruments entirely on his own, or reverse-engineered Islamic masonry sextants he'd glimpsed while negotiating with Mughal court astronomers. Either way, he supersized the concept until numbers could literally cast shadows you could nap inside. A court poet arrives to test the giant sundial for lyrical timing. He challenges you to a duel. Recite a couplet before the shadow moves 1 finger width. You blurt a rhyme about Rahu eating leftover dumplings. The shadow creeps. The poet laughs so hard he misses his cue. Joke number 3 salutes the sun and retires victorious. After midday, heat shimmers over the sandstone like invisible gravy. Workers stretch awnings along the Ram Yantra, 2 towering cylinders with open tops, then climb interior ladders to log the sun's altitude by aligning sight lines across inner pillars. You join, peeking through twin slits that frame a blazing disk dead-centered. The reading feeds into a chalkboard equation, merging Aryabhata's signs, Madhava series, and a new constant Jai Singh calls the shadow rate of majestic annoyance, his tongue-in-cheek nod to tourists who linger on the scales. Quirky footnote, every equinox, palace chefs bake circular flatbreads the exact diameter of the Jai Prakash rim. After sunrise measurements, astronomers devour them, declaring data ingestion. Carb loading has never been so literal. Toward evening, a Persian envoy arrives bearing a brass quadrant from Isfahan. The court pits metal against masonry. Which gives truer star altitude? Observers time a bright star, measure both instruments, and discover a difference of half a kashta, just under a second. Stone wins, barely, earning Jai Singh bragging rights and the envoy a consolatory mango lassi. As shadows lengthen, musicians gather at the Samrat foot, their ragas tuned to the day's measured intervals, a sonic graph of sunlight. You sit on cool marble, sipping spiced buttermilk, listening to notes slide exactly as the sun slid down the scale behind you. Instruments towering overhead glow ember red, bats whirl through arches. The goat finally flops beside a shadow line, perhaps contemplating spherical trigonometry. Walking out, you pause atop the final step and glance back. The Jantar Mantar resembles an unfinished puzzle the gods forgot to box, but inside those angles hum equations older than empire, younger than sunrise, accurate enough to stun telescoped Europeans passing through next decade.
You pocket a pebble fallen from the Samrat's apex, token of a century when predictions grew so large they became architecture. Night folds in, courtyards empty, yet the instruments keep working, silent silhouettes tracing star paths on their own stone skin. You realize that even sleep won't shut off the data stream. Every minute a new sliver of shadow crawls, and tomorrow's scribes will harvest it at dawn. You step into the city lights, pebble warm in your palm, certain that somewhere beyond cluttered rooftops, Rahu is rehearsing his bite timings, unaware a triangle of sandstone now tracks his appetite to the heartbeat.
A humid dawn haze blankets Calcutta's Hooghly River as you disembark from a creaking country boat, Sine rule tucked in your bilt, and a sun-wrought pebble still rattling inside your pouch. The goat, now answering to the name Parallax, trots beside you like an unlicensed customs officer, sniffing crates of jeet. Your mission feels simple. Hand Jai Singh's updated eclipse sheet to Fort William's Royal Society outpost, but the air already tingles with confrontation. Sextants versus sundials, Greenwich versus Gatti. Inside the fort's courtyard, red-coated sepoys drill musket moves timed by a brass chronometer ticking on a pedestal. A bespectacled lieutenant, clipboard, powdered wig, sweat beads, waves you toward an improvised observatory. Bamboo scaffold, telescopes pinched from ships, and a canvas awning stamped with the Union Jack. He tips his hat, introduces himself. Lieutenant Arthur Cracknell, of the Bengal Engineers, unofficial sky sheriff. Joke number one pops as he grins. I hear you count shadows with triangles so large London could charge rent. He gestures to a mahogany crete, just unloaded from Liverpool, a state-of-the-art Ramsden transit instrument, brass, still smelling of sea salt. Today, British astronomers plan to time a rehearsal eclipse of Jupiter's moon Io, comparing their clock to your palm leaf predictions. Mainstream historical fact, in the 1780s to 1830s, company scientists such as Stephen Longsden and John Goldingham used Jupiter satellites to set longitude, often pitting those readings against local pendant ephemerides derived from Assyria Sedanta. You produce Jai Singh's parchment. Cracknell raises an eyebrow at the vermilion serpent seal. Dramatic, he mutters, but breaks it open. His assistant logs node longitude, totality Kala, midpoint Gatti. Skepticism wrinkles their faces until they realize you've baked Bhaskara Parallax into the figures. Cracknell whistles. Precise to the Kala? That's respectable. Compliment delivered like a grudging biscuit crumb, yet victory tastes sweet. Still, colonial curiosity swings toward condescension. Over tea, lukewarm, over sugared, they pepper you with questions. Surely you don't trust goat-trampled flower rings. Is Rahu merely superstition or an algebraic euphemism? You parry with Madhava series, flash the Sine rule, recount how Jantar Mantar's stone gnomon beats their pocket chronometer on cloudless days. Parallax the goat snores through the debate, adding ambient skepticism. Cracknell leads you to the scaffolding's top deck, where the Ramsden transit aims at a pale daytime moon. He invites you to peer through the eyepiece. The silver disc quivers in tropical air like a coin atop boiling chai. They time Io's disappearance. Chronometer reads 11 hours, 43 minutes, 17 seconds GMT, local noon gongs in 10 minutes. Cracknell scribbles differences, subtracts equation of time, and scowls. His shiny British kit still wobbles 2 minutes off your palm leaf prediction. Open scholarly debate takes center stage. Cracknell suggests the discrepancy proves India's tables suffer precession lag, while his civilian colleague, Miss Eleanor Smythe, mathematician in a linen dress, parasol doubling a sextant shade, argues atmospheric refraction near horizon corrupts the transit reading. Historians still argue whether precession corrections in Indian manuals were theoretical or empirically patched, she notes, flicking parasol for punctuation. The lieutenant glares. Smythe smiles. Intellectual monsoon commences. You retrieve Aryabhata's Sine cipher leaf, showing how delta psi corrections were indeed appended every 60 years. Smythe claps nightly. Cracknell grudgingly marks asterisk. Further investigation. Joke number 2 surfaces when Parallax munches the asterisk page edge, erasing verdict and appetite simultaneously. First goat-edited Royal Society minutes on record. Mid-afternoon, a convoy trundles in from the Great Trigonometrical Survey.
chainmen measuring India mile by mile. Their leader, Captain Lambton's protege, sub-assistant George Everest, yes, that Everest, carries a theodolite the size of a rain barrel. Everest admits their terrestrial triangulation still needs star fixes to tie the network. He eyes your eclipse sheet like a missing puzzle piece. He proposes a slop: lend node timings, receive triangulation latitude arc. Knowledge barter commences. Quirky tidbit: Everest unveils a floating zenith sector, essentially a cast-iron basin filled with mercury, whose mirror surface reflects star images. Locals nickname it the Silver Pond, believing it traps spirits of fallen comets. He warns assistants not to sneeze. Rippled mercury means wobbly zenith. As dusk bleeds orange, you all convene on the flat roof of Fort William's powder magazine, safe distance from misfires, questionable distance from fireworks. Cracknell synchronizes 3 chronometers, Smythe readies a snuff box of chalk to jot times on slate. You unroll the linen mansion's cloth from Kerala, smoothing it between cannon parapets. Parallax patrols the edges, tail beating a nervous metronome. Io's reemergence sparkles just after 19 hours 4 minutes GMT. You glance at Smythe's slate. Her delta corrects Cracknell's earlier miss by 97 seconds, squarely within Bhaskara Madhava projection. Cracknell's jaw slackens. He mutters something about confounded tropical air, but finally tips his hat. Your Rahu chaps are dash deficient. Joke number 3 lands when Parallax butts his leg, and he adds, and so are your goats. Tea morphs into diplomatic supper: mango chutney, kidgeri, and sweet lime cordial. Cracknell drafts a memo recommending collaborative reduction of Hindu and royal tables. Smythe copies your sign rule design into her notebook, promising to smuggle a brass prototype to Greenwich. Everest calculates that adding your node schedule to survey charts could trim longitude uncertainty across the subcontinent to under 6 seconds of arc, a cartographic leap capable of saving ships and egos alike. Yet tension lingers, rumors that London wants to Christianize Indian cosmic narratives, that Sanskrit terms will be anglicized or excised. You counter with a toast to Rahu, Ketu, and whichever Latin names they fancy. May the math remain untamed. Cracknell chuckles, but his eyes betray worry about colonial branding. Smythe simply raises her glass, meeting your gaze in scholarly solidarity. Night deepens. Fireflies pulse among banyan tranches along the fort wall. Farther up, the real stars anchor triangulation arcs that Everest's crew will measure at dawn. Cracknell carefully packs the Ramsden Transit. Smythe tucks your copied series into her leather folio with lavender press between pages. Parallax curls atop a canvas bundle of sextant tripods, a living question mark. Before you retire, you stand beside the Hooghly, Rahu whistle resting cool against your lips. You don't blow it. Tonight, the Shadow Eater sleeps on schedule, his punctuality now certified by chronometer and goat alike. Instead, you let river breeze rustle palm leaves in your satchel, each page a treaty inked not by crowns, but by curiosity. The collision of stone gonons and brass telescopes may bruise pride, but it births sharper almanacs, and perhaps, eventually, respect. Lamplight flickers from Fort William's ramparts. Somewhere across town, Pandits recalculate sunrise prayer slots, using numbers the British just declared commendably exact. You exhale, sensing tomorrow's dawn will rise on a hemisphere slightly less divided by longitude, slightly more united by eclipse.
Rooster calls bounce off Fort William's ramparts as you and Parallax step onto a narrow-gauge train trundling toward Bengal's rice belt. Your sign rule and Rahu whistle ride safely in your satchel, along with a fresh bundle of bilingual eclipse flyers stamped by Lieutenant Cracknell and Pandit signatures side by side. Proof that colonials and courtiers can, occasionally, share decimal places without mutiny. The guard waves a green flag. Pistons wheeze, and steel wheels sing you inland where predictions will be judged not by telescopes, but by plowshares and prayer drums. The first stop is Nabadweep, university town of Sanskrit logic and sweet milk confections. Word of the coming eclipse has already repainted the calendar. Maharti moved forward 2 nights so temple fires won't sputter in shadow. Boatmen adjusted ferry times to avoid mid-river darkness. Sweet shop owners now prep extra rasagola for pilgrims who'll need sugar rushes after ceremonial fasting. A street vendor hooks you with marketing gold. Buy eclipse-safe sweets, Rahu tested, goat approved. Parallax obliges by sniffing the platter, joke number 1 wrapped in molten syrup. You edge through an alley where priests stenciled chalk diagrams on stone thresholds, mandalas matching the exact node longitude from your printed flyers. Mainstream historical fact, in many parts of India, households still daub alpona motifs keyed to eclipse charts, believing the geometry channels cosmic order back through the threshold. One priest invites you to trace a tiny sign curved beside his lotus petals. He declares it auspicious Pythagorean garnish. You bow, chalk-smudged and honored. Crossing the town square, you're swept into a council of Vaishnava monks debating whether the shadow phase counts as inauspicious night, even if it occurs at noon. One cites the Narada Samhita, another waves a Royal Society pamphlet, a third appeals to goat wisdom. Historians still argue whether scriptural passages that ban cooking during eclipses emerge from real agricultural hygiene, avoiding bacteria in cooled hearths, or ritual dread. Either way, local stoves will fall silent the moment Rahu bites. By midday, you board a bullock cart rattling south into paddy country, flyers fluttering like prayer flags from the canopy. Farmers line irrigation ditches, stomping seedlings into emerald grids while gossiping about eclipse rainfall bonuses. Folklore claims rice plants double tillers if transplanted to gatti after totality. Quirky tidbit, some elders bury a copper coin engraved with the eclipse year under the central bund. They'll dig it up at harvest to gauge grain color against coin tarnish, an impromptu soil chemistry test disguised as cosmic insurance. You pause at a well where women dunk brass pots in shimmering water. They tell you eclipses sour drinking water unless exposed to basil leaves. One hands you a sprig, instructing you to float it in your canteen. Joke number 2 surfaces when Parallax slurps the basil water first. Apparently goats fear no demon saliva. Afternoon heat thickens. You shelter beneath a banyan where itinerant calendar painters unroll scrolls of vibrant blue, cropping and pasting your longitudes into illustrated almanacs. A bearded painter sketches Rahu with a British top hat. Cultural mashup courtesy of Cracknell's earlier collaboration. Kids giggle, the painter winks, shadow, meet empire. Merchants surround him, ordering mini-scrolls to time discount sales. One gatti before first contact, everything half price. Economics bends to astronomy like bamboo in monsoon. Next village, Haripur, preps its cattle fair around the eclipse. Ox races rescheduled to dusk when shadow-stirred air cools hides and quickens hooves. Bookmakers price odds using your node chart, a mashup of trigonometry and turf betting. You mark the scoreboard with a chalk eclipse glyph. Punters applaud. Quirky footnote, winning oxen later wear garlands shaped like crescent moons, a bovine badge of punctuality. Evening drapes gold across ripening rice. You reach a riverside ghat humming with pilgrims bound for Tarapet, famed for tantric goddess worship tied to lunar omens. A boatman hands you a lamp-lit clay cup of jaggery tea and asks for the precise shadow clock, wanting to anchor his ferry during maximum obscuration so passengers can chant safely midstream. You draw the schedule in tea foam with a finger. He salutes, promising free passage for you and the celestial goat. Joke number 3 floats away on molasses steam. At camp that night, you join agronomists measuring plume grass growth they claim spikes after eclipses, triggered by sudden UV drop. They chart past seasons, overlaying your Saros flyer dates. The correlation lines up enough to earn government grant scribbles. You realize eclipse science now fertilizes budgets alongside fields. Pre-dawn stillness, and a drumbeat rolls across tents, time for a trial blackout drill. Villagers dart about covering cooking pots, monks tighten fasting cords, midwives post herbal eye drops for expecting mothers. You click your sign rule into the lamplight, counting heartbeats until predicted practice bite. On cue, someone wields a smoky lantern to mimic umbral gloom. Gasps, laughter, relief. Even rehearsal strengthens communal muscle memory. As light returns, you climb a levee and watch the river blush silver. Fireflies bob like decimal points. Distant temple bells intone final gatti before sunrise chores. You grasp how predictions thread every domain. Meals, markets, marriage, manure. Without them, life would stutter like an untuned flute. With them, even Rahu becomes an accountant marking columns in cosmic ledger. You recall your first chalk shadow, your meridian rice paper dot, the Kerala loom, Jai Singh's stone wing, Cracknell's reluctant respect. All flowed into this moment where farmers scheduled transplanting and monks time mantras by the same numbers. The goat at your heels has nibbled node math into folklore. Jasmine-scented scrolls ferry signs upriver. Basil leaves guard water jars. Eclipse prediction isn't abstract elegance. It's pulse, purse, and pilgrimage.
Darkness has an appointment, and the whole plain keeps it. You stand on a low mud embankment, halfway between Haripoor's ox racing field and the basil-guarded well. Parallax grazes nearby, a living footnote. The eastern rim of sky already glows ash gray instead of sunrise gold, a first whisper that something is off script. Even the sparrows hush mid-chirp. Temple bells ring the T printed on your flyers. Farmers drop sickles, cart drivers pull oxen to a halt, potters cap their kilns. The world shifts into hush mode like a giant audience drawing breath before the curtain. The sun is still brilliant, of course, but everyone feels the backstage cue. Rahu's head is almost on its mark. You flip open your wax tablet, Bhaskara's corrections etched like battle plans, and check the second hand of a British chronometer on loan from Lieutenant Cracknell. It takes in smug metallic rhythm beside your palm leaf gritty clock made from a pierced coconut shell floating in a brass bowl. 2 centuries of bureaucracy, 1 whisper of water. Both agree, 5 kala until first contact. Joke number 1 surfaces. Even rival timepieces make nice when cosmic drama offers front row seats. High above, a knee-shaped cloud drips aside, leaving the sun alone in cleaned-up blue. You squint through smoked glass shard, courtesy of jantar-mantar artisans, and catch it, a nibble, black as wet ink, on the lower limb. Gasps ripple outward like concentric rice paddy rings. Drummers strike their rehearsed rhythm, boom, pause, boom, boom. Children bang bronze pots. Mothers scatter sesame seeds to decoy Rahu's appetite. Parallax joins with an enthusiastic bleat that wobbles the tempo. The shadow grows, the light thins. Colors drain from saris and sugarcane alike until everything looks filmed through dusty parchment. Temperature dives. Oxen stamp nervously. You notice rooster confusion. Some crow in protest. Others tuck heads under wings as if midnight dropped early. Your own skin prickles, a biological homage to the data you once plotted on a moonlit rooftop. Mid-eclipse Gati arrives. A trumpet blasts from the field, signal for ox racers to halt practice, and a white mouse in a brass cage, remember that Chola custom, scampers free, tail perfect corkscrew. It scurries across the dry levee, tail casting a crescent shadow that mirrors the sky. Mainstream historical fact slides in. Identical rodent releases are logged in 10th century Chola records, marking precise totality points for archivists. Quirky tidbit tags along. Local folklore insists whichever way the mouse darts first foretells monsoon onset. Today it bolts west towards storm-born clouds. You glance at chronometer and coconut. Both indicate totality onset within 3 seconds of Jai Singh's stone gnome prediction. You allow yourself a grin. Triangle beats pocket brass again. Historians still argue whether such minute accuracy came from raw observation, intuitive fudge, or quiet midnight borrowing of Arab tables. But right now, no one cares. The sun is a ring of fire, the sky a bruised violet, and numbers have kept their promise. Someone nearby whispers a Sanskrit verse. Yad Basayati Suryaha, Tat Api Shayayam Prakashate. What the sun illumines shines even in its shadow. A British surveyor notes the line, perhaps to quote in a Royal Society footnote. Cross-cultural footnotes bloom everywhere today.
Cracknell's longitude markers, Smythe's sine rule sketch, Everest's floating meridian basin, all writing quietly on Rahu's timetable. As the seconds tick, you feel a projection into the centuries ahead. One day, men and women will hunch over computer screens in windowless control rooms, timing lunar eclipses to calibrate laser reflectors on moon-landed spacecraft. On another coast, school kids will live stream solar corona flares through smartphones coded with algorithms that are at heart Madhava's infinite series disguised in silicone. Airliners will change routes because satellites, modern sky sticks, tell them that the stratosphere will dim at 10:13 a.m. local time. The cosmic ledger keeps writing itself, only the parchment changes. Time to release the breath. A rim of ruby pearls, Bailey's beads, pops around the sun's edge, the diamond ring moment. Drums crescendo, goats bleat in tenor harmonics, pilgrims chant mantra over boiling conch shells. Shadow recedes like ink dissolving in water. Color floods back. Roosters reboot their morning routine. You jot final notes. Prediction error, less than 1/4 Kala. Cracknell will pout and recalibrate chronometers. Pundits will celebrate with clarified butter lamps, and ox racers will argue the mouse forecast. And Parallax, he headbutts your wax tablet, signing off with goat cartouche. Joke number 2, being hoof-stamped by peer reviewer is the new gold standard. The crowd disperses, some to plunge into basil-perfumed wells, others to claim half-price sweets. Life resumes, but you feel gears clicking into a larger chronometer. Rahu retreats on schedule. Ketu drags the rest of the serpent tail around for next year's lunar encore, and somewhere Jai Singh's stone triangle etches another second onto its marble scale. And somewhere Kerala scribes extend Madhava's series 1 decimal deeper. A farmer pats your shoulder and thanks you for teaching the sun to tell time. You correct him. You only translated. The sky already knew the schedule. Yet you pocket the gratitude like a lucky bead because translation is its own gentle miracle. Bridging goat track and telescope dome, Sanskrit mantra and Greenwich minute, fear and understanding. Sunlight now blazes ordinary gold again. Children chase the escaped mouse. Oxen resume chewing, rice seedlings shimmer. You stroke the sign rule one last time before sliding it back into your sash. It feels less like a weapon now, more like a bookmark in the story the heavens are still writing. Joke number 3 nods. Even Rahu prefers orderly chapters. The crowd's echoes drift away, leaving only the hush of rustling rice and a distant flute tracing slow, spiraling notes through warm afternoon air. You wander down a narrow footpath, sandals pressing soft impressions into earth that still remembers the moon shadow's cool kiss. Each step feels lighter than the last, as though the sun's return has lifted a subtle weight from every shoulder, including yours. Cicadas pulse gentle rhythms, no longer racing the dim, but easing into a steady, sleepy cadence. A breeze stirs basil leaves in nearby wells. Their faint, mint-sweet fragrance drift toward you, mingling with hay and distant wood smoke. You pause beside a lone banyan, its low branches swaying like slow pendulums, and rest your palm against its smooth bark, feeling the tree's quiet heartbeat echo through your own slowing pulse. Somewhere behind you, Parallax settles in shaded grass, hooves tucked beneath him, eyes half closed. Even the restless goat senses the day's long exhale. Above, pale wisps of cloud glide westward, soft brushstrokes across an endless sky, now wholly, peacefully bright. You breathe deep, once, twice, letting the warmth fill lungs, then linger, then drift out in a sigh that carries the last fragments of excitement into the open air. Numbers, shadows, and chants slip further into the background, melting into one seamless memory stitched with wonder. In its place forms a gentle, unhurried stillness. Allow that stillness to settle over you like a cotton shawl at dusk. Notice how your eyelids grow heavy,
how thoughts slow and spread like ripples smoothing on a calm pond. With every breath, weightless tranquility unfurls a little more, gliding along arms, shoulders, neck, and then gently across your brow. The banyan's leaves murmur lullabies of ancient geometry and cosmic trust. Night will come, morning will follow, and the heavens will keep perfect, patient time.